This is Think Twice MTG. I'm Alan, and you are watching the third, almost said second, third match of Basement FNM number 4. So here we've got blue-black Echoes versus blue-black Mill. You're going to have Drew on Echoes on the left, Max on Mill on the right. You should know what Mill does at this point. It likes to mill. We've seen it if you've been keeping up with the matches in this edition of Basement FNM. Drew's deck on the left is kind of like a mashup of a classic Demir mid-range deck, Psychic Frogs, Bowmasters. He's got some Oculuses, Unearths, stuff like that. And then he also has a package of based around the card Echoes of Eons, Echo of Eons. I don't know if that's plural or not. But anyway, what that card says, its text is, I think it's like 6 mana normally on the for the full cost. And it says each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library and then draws 7 cards. Drew takes advantage of that by having Orcish Bowmasters. So if his opponent draws the 7 cards, he gets 7 triggers. So that can deal quite a bit of damage. He has Narset Parter Veils, which says your opponent can't draw more than 1 card per turn, so he gets to draw 7, his opponent draws 1. And he also has Shieldred, which says anytime your opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life, so that's 14 damage. If you have one of those cards in play when you resolve the Echoes. He's running Echoes for 2 reasons. One, it has a flashback cost of 2 and a black, or 2 and a blue, sorry. So he can discard it with things like Psychic Frog, mill it over with Thought Scour or whatever, and then get to cast it for really cheap, which is the main way he's trying to cast it. He's very rarely attempting to cast it for the full normal cost. We do see Max start off here with Polluted Delta, and then Drew is going to play using an island to play a Vexing Bauble, which is very important in this matchup because one of Max's best cards is Archive Trap, which says that if your opponent has searched their library this turn, you can cast this card for free. Vexing Bauble stops that. So the other reason that Drew is using Echo of Eons and maybe not the more readily known Days Undoing is because Days Undoing says the same thing. Each opponent shuffles their graveyard and hand into their library and then draws 7 cards. And then it says end the turn. So no other abilities trigger from that. So Drew can't then use things like Shieldred or Bowmaster as a Punisher effect if he has Days Undoing, because it doesn't allow those abilities to resolve. It just ends the turn. So that is why he is doing that, using that card instead. The other thing that he can do is he draws 7 cards. If he has a Psychic Frog in play, he can discard as many cards as he wants. So like you can do a play where if you have Echoes in your graveyard, or if it's in your hand and you have the Psychic Frog, you discard your whole hand, you flash back the Echoes, draw 7 more cards, and you could discard all of those again. So you can go from a 1 power frog to very high a many power frog. Drew is going to play a frog on turn 2, which is going to get pushed. He's going to respond by discarding the Echoes. Echoes of Eternity, or Echo of Eternity, or Eons, sorry, Echo of Eons. Then back over to Max for turn 3. Looks like only 1 colored mana source so far for Max, which is going to make some of his spells difficult. I do notice at least 1 Archive Trap in hand, so that Vexing Bauble already doing some work. Second Frog coming in for Drew, followed up by Scalding Tarn. Passes the turn back. It looks like we're going to cycle a Fractured Sanity, so Drew will mill 4 and Max will draw a card. Looks like a few lands and a Emperor of Bones is what I saw. Here comes a Hedron Crab, and followed up by what looks like a Swamp for 3 more mills. Counterspell, Fatal Push, and a card I didn't catch got milled there. And then looks like we're going to have a Field of Ruin on the Watery Grave, which will give the Hedron Crab yet another trigger. So Drew's going to mill 3 more here once they resolve any of this stuff. Drew is also searching up a basic with the Field of Ruin effect. Both players get to search. Looks like he's assessing if he wants a swamp or an island. Put both into his options. He goes with the island at the end of all things. And we see an Undercity Sewers, a Tainted Indulgence, and the third Psychic Frog. And then Drew's going to go fetching. Finds a different Undercity Sewers. One thing that you have to keep in mind when you're playing against Mill is keeping track of what fetchables you do still have available in your deck. Drew decides he does not want a Polluted Delta, though. Looks like the frog is going to attack. Draws a card after dealing 1 damage. No discards, no increasing the clock. Looks like maybe Drew has an Unearth in hand. He's assessing the graveyard to see maybe what his options are. Emperor of Bones as well. Looks like maybe a Narset. So Thoughtseize he's pulling to the front, potentially. And he's going to pass, so my guess is maybe he also has a counterspell? Since he didn't play any of those other spells there. Bowmaster. Fatal Push on the Frog will resolve. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is the follow-up. And we're going to see a pitched Force of Negation. I didn't see what he exiled out of his hand, though. Looks like he got rid of the Narset. Or he didn't have Narset and it was that Force of Negation. I may have not quite accurately noticed any of the some of the cards in hand. I'm just doing my best to kind of track. And we are going to see that Thoughtseize. Looks like we have an Archive Trap, another Fractured Sanity, and a Glimpse the Unthinkable, blue-black mill 10 cards. I believe that's the name. Drew's going to take that. Right now, Max does not have the ability to cast the triple blue spell or the 5-mana spell, so Drew takes the only castable card in hand. And then he is going to cast the Echoes. He accidentally moved his Bowmaster to the graveyard. I think he did it instead of the Thoughtseize. So they're both going to shuffle their hands and their graveyards into the library and then draw 7. The Echo of Eons will be exiled because that's what Flashback says. All right, both players have drawn 7. So looks like we're going to have 2 triggers from the Bowmaster go on the Hedron Crab. Probably the other 5 go at the player. We do see Max go down 5 life there. And then, so Drew should now have an 8/8 token. So this is an attack for 9, which will put Max down to 3. There you have it. That is the central idea of the deck, is do something along those lines to abuse this effect. Max does have a full grip now of cards. Looks he's looking at a Jace. Looks like maybe a Surgical Extraction. Here is a land. That is an Otawara Soaring City. Oh, never mind. Not that land. Don't want that one. He's going to start with a Ruin Crab, then Mill. Upside of Echo of Eons against Mill is it puts his graveyard back in his library. So That's pretty good. We're going to see a fatal push on the Bowmaster. Okay. Oh, second fatal push on the token. Oh, that was a sideboard card. Second crab. Drew also with a full grip. Looks like we see an Undercity Sewers, an Unearth, another Bowmaster. Some blue cards that I can't quite tell what they are. Maybe a Horrent Oculus is one. There's at least one Oculus in hand, if not multiple. He's going to start with the Undercity Sewers and Surveil. Decides not Frog. Could even potentially just unearth that. I believe Drew is asking what that land is. I do not know what the land is either, so I would help you out if I could, but I can't, so I won't. And that's the world we live in. Looks like we're going to start with 2 mana. 2 mana. That is an Emperor of Bones. So this should represent lethal. So Drew's going to target the Psychic Frog. Then he will activate the Emperor of Bones ability, brings the frog back. He has at least 3 cards in his graveyard, give it flying, and he can discard his hand to the frog for lethal damage because Max is only at 3. He just says, I discard my whole hand. He has more than 2 cards in hand, so that will make it lethal. So it should be, it looks like looking at a surgical extraction. He says it can't do surgical because the Vexing Bauble, not that that could stop that play anyway, and so that is our first game. So Echo of Eons getting to do its thing here in this first game. Cool kind of interaction and engine to see in a deck, one that has a lot of fun possibilities. The player's going to go to sideboarding now. Sorry, bumped the mic. My bad. Hopefully it didn't sound too loud to anybody. Players are assessing their sideboard options. While they are doing that, we're going to move from sitting mode to standing mode. If you don't have a standing desk and you sit for a long time, maybe playing Magic or doing something else, I highly recommend having one. It is a very nice option and tool to have, is to be able to stand and not get, some of the aches, pains, cramps, stiffness that comes from sitting for a long time. So yeah, there we are. While players are shuffling, and if we have any other random down times that happen, I've decided I'm going to start to fill these times with just my own thoughts on whatever subject I choose, trying to keep it related to Magic. One thing that gets me, I'm a person who likes to have matching arts. I have one playset of one card in my collection that is not completely matching arts, and that is my Agatha's Soul Cauldrons. 3 of them have the little foil planeswalker symbol in the bottom corner of the art because they came from prize packs. At some point, I didn't open them myself. I wish I had opened them. I had to actually purchase them. And then one does not, but all my other cards match. But one thing that really gets me is you can order the same art from the same set of a card, and then you get it, and then the coloring is off on some of the copies. They're more saturated or less saturated because sometimes you just got a card that just got new ink put in the printer, or maybe it's running low in the printing machine or whatever. I don't know exactly the process to make it, and that just drives me up the wall because it's like, oh, they still don't look the same. And I guess I'm just kind of nitpicky like that with it, and it drives me nuts. So maybe you're in the same boat. Maybe you're saying, this dude's crazy. Either way, there we are. So players are now drawing cards for our second game. So Max should be on the play once again because he lost game one. Drew surveilling a hand here. I can see his hand better. Looks like we see a Psychic Frog and an Abhorrent Oculus, Misty Rainforest, Unearthed Island, maybe a Polluted Delta. Max is going to start with an Undercity Sewers. Drew draws a new card for the turn. See an Archive Trap in Max's hand. He draws a card. He plays a Hedron Crab. Follows up with an island. Drew's going to mill 3. Orcish Bowmasters, and Tainted Indulgence are the hits. Looks like I see maybe some other colorless lands like Field of Ruin or something. Max is shifting that Archive Trap to, keeps on pumping it to play it. I think you're saying they're doing it before or after my surveil. So we'll see how they decide to resolve it. So I think they're going to do the surveil first, and then Max would go. So Drew surveils the Thoughtseize and then is going to mill 13. Let's see. Emperor of Bones. There's an Echo, an Unearth, Thoughtseize, another Emperor of Bones, and another Unearth, a Shieldred. 3 Bowmasters gone. Okay. So Drew's going to go to his second turn now. Looks like he just shuffled his, or shifted his Unearth to the forefront of his hand. He's looking at seeing his options are Emperor of Bones or Orcish Bowmasters, I believe. I did not notice any other 3 or lower drop cards in the hand. Looks like maybe he's going to choose to go with the Frog. Ribbit. Looks like maybe that was a Soul Guide Lantern that was grabbed. So we're going to see a Field of Ruin be played. Conversation from on the other table is slightly distracting. See a Fatal Push, a counterspell, on another land to get milled due to the Hedron Crab. Max is thinking it over. Looks like he's getting ready to play that Soul Guide Lantern. Yep, he had flicked that one kind of farther out. Sorry about that glare in that one spot. We can see most of the rest of the board, which is pretty nice. But we do see Soul Guide Lantern. Looks like we're choosing what to get rid of. And quick check, but I believe it is probably going to be that Echo. Undoes all of the milling that Max has been able to do. So the Echo is gone, no longer in the yard. And then looks like a pass. Drew's going to discard the Oculus to the Frog before he goes to his turn. Probably planning to unearth it, although with the Soul Guide Lantern in play now, not really going to be a play that should work out if Max is on top of it. See a Fatal Push on the Crab. Fetch. Looks like preparing for a shock because he's lowered his life total by 3, now down to 16. Yep, there it is, the Watery Grave. And Frog's going to attack in. Take 2. See a draw. Then Unearth, presumably targeting Oculus. Going to cycle a Fractured Sanity to mill Drew for 4 more. We see Frog, Shieldred, Narset, and a land. And then he's going to sacrifice Soulguide Lantern to have target opponent exile their graveyard. Or maybe it's all opponents exile their graveyard. I don't know. It's essentially the same thing. I believe Max is saying the Unearth will stay in the graveyard because it was on the stack when the Soulguide Lantern went to resolve its ability. So maybe a Drown in the Lock and 3 lands in the hand for Max. That's what I'm seeing, I think. Like a Field of Ruin, a Polluted Delta, something, and what I believe is a Drown. There is that Polluted Delta. We're going to go to the Frog turn once again. Undercity Sewers. Decides to keep on top. He'll draw it when he draws with Frog's ability. See something. He drew something. Something he wanted. Vexine Bauble. It's probably fine. No free cards in Max's hand, and then a pass. So maybe he drew a counter spell? Not sure. Ruin Crab. Followed up by a land. Maybe a Ghost Corridor? Once again, I apologize for the glare in that bottom right of your screen. We do the best we can. It's not perfect. Then the Delta is going to mill 3 more. Bowmaster, Counterspell, Counterspell. Looks like it was a Tainted Indulgence was what Drew kept on top. If the positioning of his hand remains. Looks like we're going to go for Field of Ruin. So maybe Drew announced floating some mana. He's got to see if he has. He does have a basic remaining. That deck is getting rather skinny, though. Oculus, Oculus, and a fetch land. Field of Ruin does a bit of heavy lifting in the mill deck. Looks like we're gonna hit the Undercity Sewer with the Ghost Quarter. Probably a Choose Not to Search. With the Floating Man, he's gonna cast a Tainted Indulgence. He's gonna draw 2. And then probably has to choose 1 to discard. It's only discard 1. Counting up the different CMCs or numbers. And then discarding an extra land to the Frog because he probably doesn't have any fetchables remaining. The Frog is now 3 power, Undercity Sewer, mills a fetch land. Looks like a question being asked about the Echo. Looks like he's gonna fire that off. So this is a little bit of a mistake. If Drew's going to fire off the Echo and he has the Frog in play, he should discard his whole hand first just to increase the power of the frog. Um, you're going to get rid of those cards anyway, so it just becomes free because both zones get shuffled in, so it's just free counters. Thing to note, lots of little interactions that are always easier to see when you're not sitting in the game playing it. Always keep it in mind when you're watching other people play Magic that it is infinitely easier to see lines and see things when you are not the one playing. When you're playing, you're thinking about so many different things all at once, trying to keep track of complex board states, thinking about your future lines, worried about mistakes you made earlier. There's just some nerves sometimes involved. So Drew currently has a 3 power frog. He has 7 cards in hand. He could have a 10 power frog. 10 is not 15 though, and Max is going to have a full grip. And I don't believe Drew's library is overly large still. Looks like 3 lands get discarded to the frog, maybe to allow it to jump. Looks like we're also seeing 2 more frogs. What looks like an Oculus and something else. Couldn't tell what the last card was. Draw of a card. Looks like maybe it was a Bowmaster. Can't tell what the last card is. Maybe an Indulgence, perhaps. I think there I would have liked to see a play of more cards discarded to the frog by Drew. Because, like, the Oculus in hand doesn't do anything. A second frog being played the turn after is probably going to be too slow based on the size of his library. I believe he is probably mostly all in at this point on this one frog surviving through all of this. So you kind of have to play into that, where those other cards are maybe not going to do a whole lot because they're going to take multiple turns to get going. But I may be wrong. We'll see. I'm just saying what I think I might do in his position. Looks like Max thinking about what to do now after playing the Hedron Crab. Counting up the library is an important piece of information to know how to game plan with Mill. It's the same thing as knowing your opponent's life total. So he's trying to see if he has enough. It's like a Soul Guide Lantern targeting something. Looks like maybe an Echo. So it looks like we see Drown, Archive Trap, and 2 more lands in play. So very likely this frog is not going to live. Discards an Echo. Oh, all right, all right. Discards some more frogs. So Drew can kind of try to go all in on the frog here. He does not have to, like, go for the Echo yet either. So the frog is being given flying. So notably here, there's an interesting dynamic between frog and drown in the lock. Because if Drew has in his graveyard a multiple of cards of 3, then he could just exile his graveyard to make it so that the drown doesn't have the requisite number of cards in Drew's graveyard to see to kill the frog. I can't tell exactly how many cards were in the yard, but that may have been a missed opportunity here on Drew's side to look and see, because if he had 6 cards in his graveyard, or if he didn't, he could discard up to a multiple of 3 and draw them. Little bit of a jump in the video here. Things got a little bit chaotic with another conversation happening in the room. Max did win the very next turn. He went to resolve I believe it was a fractured sanity, or maybe, no, he probably just cast the archive trap and then Drew conceded. So we are on to game 3. Sorry for the little bit of a jump in the video trying to I was just trying to clean up a long, drawn out one single turn out of the video for viewers' sake. So Max did end up milling Drew on the next turn. But so here we are in game 3. Looks like Drew's on a mulligan to 6. Max appears to have kept his hand. Polluted Delta and a pass from Drew. So this will be the decider. Whoever wins this one wins it all. Shelldock Isle. So Hideaway looks at 4 cards, puts one underneath there, and I believe it's once library's below 20 or something like that, he can pay a blue and sack the land and cast it for free. Something in that zone of stuff. Drew goes a surveilling. Thoughtseize. It's been double archive trap is the response. 26 cards hitting the bin. It's a big turn here right off the bat for our mill aficionado. Drew's going to count out nearly half of his library, over half of what is left at this point. So, big chunk gone. Max is probably going to take a look at it just to see, maybe note if there's anything of great importance or anything that he did not know about before. Something you are absolutely allowed to do, and often a good idea to do, is just to take a perusal of what went in. Looks like land, Oculus Bowmaster, and some other card I didn't catch. Looks like it may be a Surveil to the top, and a pass. No pressure after already half of his deck being gone is not a fantastic position for our buddy Drew here. We're going to Visions of Beyond, draw 3. Visions says draw a card, and then if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, draw 3 instead. A build your own Ancestral Recall, followed up by a Field of Ruin. Drew passes? Thought he had an Oculus in hand that he could cast. Maybe as a counter spell and he wants to hold up that. But I think you're in a position where you really got to put pressure. Cycle of Fractured Sanity plays very well around a counter spell. Still doing some milling, still progressing the game state, but not getting hit by any of that stuff. So we see a Surgical. We don't know what it's targeting because it's just all being done verbally. But Drew has moved that counterspell to the front of his hand, so that is why he held up his mana. Presumably, Max targeted the Echo of Eons. So if Drew flashes back the Echo, it undoes all of the mill work that Max has done thus far. I believe that white bordered card in Max's hand is an Ensnaring Bridge. We are going to see Oculus. played. Looks like Drew's just picking out lands. One strategy you can consider in this position against Mill is to look through your deck or look through your graveyard and see if there are anything you don't want to be surgical extraction, and you exile them out of your yard yourself to protect the other copies. Now, if Max is going after Drew's Echo of Eons, he wants it to be in the graveyard, so that's not really the best situation here. Ruin Crab is the play. No land still for 2 turns for Max. So still just that Shelldock Isle and Field of Ruin. He's facing down 7 power right now on this turn that only increases bit by bit every turn with that Abhorrent Oculus Manifest Dread ability. I believe there the discussion may have been about the mana value of the manifested card. It is currently 0 while it's face down. If it is a creature and it gets faced up, it becomes the value of the card on itself because it is an actual card. It is not a token. There are tokens to kind of as reminder tokens to represent what it is, as reminder text of it's a 2/2 that has, I don't know, Ward 1. Is that what Manifest Dread does? Is it's Manifest but with Ward 1? Looks like we're going to have Oculus brought back by Emperor of Bones, hit for 10. And then that Oculus disappears because of the finality counter on it. Looks like we've counted the library. Looks like a fetch land. We might just be seeing the Shellduck Isle do its thing here. There is, I believe it's a Fractured Sanity. And with the Mill of 3 plus the free cast of 14, that may do it for us here. Yep, that is it. That is a scoop up there. So Mill is going to win this one on the back of that free cast Mill 14 with Fractured Sanity. So in the Battle of the Dimir decks, we have Mill coming out as the winner. Thanks for sticking with us. More Basement FNM to come.